Now, maybe trying to engage with the gibbering nonsense that comes out of Alan Sugar's mouth is on a hiding to nothing. I'm going to try engaging with the latest, and I must repeat, nonsense to come out of Lord Alan Sugar's head. So his first stupid tweet was, sorry to be blunt about it, but I mean, they really are stupid tweets. Mick Lynch loves the cameras. He got stitched up by JMB today. Next thing he will be doing strictly or appearing on Graham Norton. Anyone knows how much he's paid? That's Keir, my cat, attacking the camera. I hope he does do Graham Norton, actually. That'd be quite a good, and I'd say effective way of a trade union leader reaching a mass audience. So I think Graham Norton should definitely give Mick Lynch a call. And I think if Mick Lynch gives that call, he should accept. Excellent idea. Thank you, Alan Sugar. You have come up with a sensible idea. Now, some might have quietly just toddled off at this point, just quit while they're behind. Not Alan Sugar. He's a trooper for humiliation. Off he goes again. So he says, "Hello, Mick Lynch. Are you happy with yourself bringing the country and ordinary people down on their knees over Christmas? You don't fool me waiting for the employers to come to table. You love the publicity. Your members would like to earn what you get. Why don't you waive your salary?" Yeah, a few things here. So, firstly, the RMT were making progress. They were negotiating with the train operating companies, and they were making progress. And then what happened is the government intervened to mess that progress up by inserting a completely, obviously unacceptable new clauses, which then destroyed the negotiations. It's clear the government wanted this confrontation because they want to face down unions, they want to crush trade unions, they want to be Thatcherism Mark II. That's what's going on here, just so we're absolutely clear. But let's engage with the other point, because the RMT are clearly negotiating. Anyone knows the RMT, know they're negotiating in good faith. The point of a trade union is to improve the terms and conditions and wages of the workers they represent. That's the point. So obviously, if they were going to make progress there, they're going to accept a deal. That's how trade unionism works. But let's engage with his other point, such as it is. So Mick Lynch's salary, which is just over £84,000, it doesn't make him some obscenely rich fat cat multimillionaire. It's a perfectly reasonable salary for the general secretary of a mass organisation. Now, I say this because you often get this attack on trade union leaders. They're often called union barons and bosses. But, you know, a baron isn't democratically elected, are they? I mean, they're hereditary or whatever. And a boss implies something which is, again, quite dictatorial and all the rest of it. Trade union leaders are democratically elected and democratically accountable. So if members don't think someone like Mick Lynch is doing a good job, I mean, they elected him into that position in the first place. If they don't think he's doing a good job, then they can just boot him out. That's how a democracy works, including a democracy within a trade union. It's not like a company with an actual boss there. Workers can't vote in or out their bosses. But there's also a national executive committee that a trade union leader is accountable to, like Mick Lynch. So, you know, if members aren't happy with any aspects of what Mick Lynch is doing, or indeed his salary, which is just the salary of obviously an organisation like the RMT, then they can just remove him. That's, you know, Alan Sugar's workers can't get rid of Alan Sugar. They can't go, "You're fired," etc. Just because he's not democratically accountable to workers. Just important point to make. Now, I think this is important to note because unions are the biggest democratic movement in the country, but they're not treated as such. They're treated as kind of illegitimate, as interlopers, as not really part of a democracy. They're a kind of enemy within, as Margaret Thatcher called the minders. But union leaders aren't dictators. It's a really important point. Now, you know, some go on off sometimes, well, union turnout in elections for general secretaries is low, but that's because the government won't allow votes to take place electronically or in workplaces. But let's not get sidetracked. But in terms of the substance, this is the classic, "Oh, champagne socialist. Oh, you call yourself a fighter for ordinary people, but look at how rich you are." But the thing is, if you believe in social justice, if you believe in a better society that's more equal, where workers have more of a share of what they actually create, if you believe in justice and, you know, minorities having, you know, emancipation, as well as working class people having a fair deal, we could go on, then they always find something to attack you on. So if you're too poor, they accuse you of envy. If you're too rich, they accuse you of hypocrisy. If you're too young, they call you naive. And if you're too old, they call you a dinosaur. You literally can't win. I found this myself recently because for a long time, I was attacked for kind of, young, naive, all the rest of it. And now, because I'm 38, boo-hoo-hoo, they go on about how, Owen, he's old now, he thinks he can speak for younger people, but he's old, he's middle-aged. I mean, I'm not sure 38 is middle-aged. All I'm saying is, I didn't even get the bit in the middle where I was just the right age. I was too young, and now apparently I'm too old. Anyway, I'm not bitter. I am a bit bitter, actually, but let's not get bogged down in my own personal bitterness. There's always something, is the point I'm making. They'll always find some personal characteristic to avoid engaging in an argument, such as workers should get a decent deal in life. Now, the argument of the left is for progressive taxation. I mean, that's so the more you earn, the more you should contribute. So, really basic principle. So, Labour, for example, in 2017 and 2019, their view was, because of the stagnation of people's living standards, they thought that the bottom 95% shouldn't have their taxes increased. Only the top 5% should have their taxes increased. Now, back then, I mean, inflation has had something of an impact. But back then, that was 45% imposed on everything above £80,000. So Mick Lynch would only a very small amount of his earnings would actually have qualified for that as the top 5% of earners, which is he is in just. But the argument, the arguments we should be having, because it's interesting that the likes of Alan Sugar only care about inequality and pay at the top when they can have a go at a trade union leader or someone who's left-wing. They're not actually interested in addressing the fundamental inequalities of wealth and income in British society. Of course they're not. So, if we want to look at wealth, for example, the top 1% of households have 230 times more wealth than those in the bottom 10%. If you look at the pandemic, a trauma for most, but during the pandemic, a new billionaire was created every 30 hours. Astonishing. So by 2021, Europe's billionaires were $1 trillion richer than a year before that. That's what we need to talk about, how the wealth created by the labour of hundreds of millions, billions of people across the planet ends up being concentrated in the hands of the few. That's what we should actually be genuinely angry about. Now, Mick Lynch isn't exploiting the labour of workers. I mean, that's, he's not got this army of people working for him who he's extracting profit from their labour. He's doing the opposite. His job is to fight exploitation by securing better terms and conditions and wages for his workforce. And actually, the RMT have a proud history of doing that. They've got a proud record of doing that. And that is why they're hated, and that's why they're demonised, because they're effective at their jobs. Now, finally, there is obviously this very personalised onslaught against Mick Lynch. I think it's just important to clarify or emphasise, and this lesson needs learning and relearning over and over again, is firstly, anyone who is seen to pose a threat to the status quo in this country is monstered. So Mick Lynch should obviously take this as a badge of honour. He's effective. He's struck a chord. Millions of people, though, well, fair play to him, including people who aren't traditional or wouldn't see themselves as political. That's what scares them. But of course, I think someone like Mick Lynch himself would say that this isn't an attack on him, even though they're using him as a kind of personalised, direct object to focus ire on, but on what he represents. And that's on a trade union movement that doesn't roll over but fights back. That's what scares them. So we're going to keep having these ludicrous personalised attacks on people like Mick Lynch, but actually it's an attack on you. Because what they're trying to do is to basically scare people into not sticking out their necks and to try and vilify anything and anyone who dares challenge the status quo. That's what this is all about, and I think that's something everyone needs to bear in mind. Please like, subscribe, I'll see you next time.